Hey, good evening. How's it going, guys? Vladimir Adonis here, coming to you with another Black Creators Connect interview series. And, tonight I'm pretty excited. I have a special guest tonight. If you happen to be catching us live, do me a favor, hit pound live and simply let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you happen to be catching this broadcast via the replay, do me a favor, hit pound replay and let us know where you are tuning in from. So tonight, my special guest, she goes by the name of Chioma Deere of Deere Law Firm. So essentially, what she's going to be talking about, I'm basically going to be asking her some clarifying questions. What she's going to be talking about is estate planning, legacy, and wealth in tech. So Chioma, take a minute to expand on that intro and just tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all, Vlad. I'm really excited to be a part of Black Creators Connect and everything that you're doing. I'm really proud of you and excited that you are leading this community that is so many strong. So thanks so much for having me on. My name again is Attorney Chioma Deere. I am an attorney here in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm Florida licensed attorney, and my main area of practice is estate planning, probate, trust administration. Generally speaking, that means wills and estate planning before you die and helping people with the assets of the dead person after they pass away.
Cool.
And the reason I talk about estate planning, legacy, and tech is because a lot of what we do in the Black community really sometimes avoids or forgets to include that part of your legacy. What are you leaving behind more than just money or wealth, which is important, but also making sure that the values and the things that you've contributed to the community are also acknowledged, recognized, carried on, spoken about, things like that. And then tech, because I'm a technology certified attorney. As a part of my prior life before estate planning, I was a insurance defense litigator, and a part of my world was being involved in technology and forensics and making sure that we could collect the data that or preserve the data that had to do with people's iPhones, basically
Cool.
in a nutshell.
That's
But
amazing. That's amazing.
yeah, and that translates quite easily into estate planning because so much of what we do is digital. We have significant digital lives in this day and age, and I bring that extensive knowledge into my estate planning and probate practice.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, there's so many different areas of law that one can choose. What made you choose estate planning? There's usually, something that drives us in that direction. What would you say, was the reason for you to go into that area of law?
Thanks for asking that. That why is what drives me with a lot of the work that I do with my community and my clients. Often the conversations are uncomfortable and heavy. Often I am also a counselor helping people to get to deal with their grief. But one of the things that made this area of the law really important for me, including with my background in technology, is that um, a few years ago, several years ago, my younger brother got sick. And when he did, we were basically, stunned, but also unable to help him as much as we could have with all of the things that were going on in his life. He was in the middle of getting separated from his spouse then. He had a young child. He had a multi-million dollar company or was about to be multi-million dollar company, and he had employees. And then he had his own life and everything that was going on in his life. And we didn't have any way to help him with that. He was in a coma for several days, and it was one of those things that really was an eye opener, especially since so many people that I knew just didn't have anything in place. And a lot of times when we think about estate planning, we're talking about, oh, you're just trying to call down death on me, right? You're just trying to talk about death. That's not what estate planning is about. It's about preserving, protecting your wealth and your legacy. And luckily, I'm happy to say, not luckily, but gladly, my brother did recover. and we were able to help him while he was, recovering. But that really did strike a passionate fire in me to help my community. And then I learned about the wealth gap for Black people, and how a lot of what that has to do with is generational wealth, and making sure that I'm educating my community so that they know how to protect that generational wealth. And I'm excited about it now because there's so much wealth being generated in our community, and making sure that I help my community by educating them about how to protect it and then how to grow it, is just huge. All of that, by the way, or most of it, is digital. Most of what we're doing right now is like this. We're using these digital ways of creating that wealth. So my job as an attorney in estate planning is to help people to protect it as well as to grow it.
All right, good stuff. All right, so got a couple of people tuning in live. Pound live, much needed information. So right with smiles. Thank you for tuning in. Pound live if you live. Pound replay if you happen to be catching us via the replay. And if you have any questions around estate planning, wills, and trusts for Miss Chioma Deere, type that in the comments. Even if you're catching this via the replay, what we'll do, what she'll do, she'll come back and perhaps engage and answer any questions for you. So if you live, if you want to ask questions live, do so live. And if you're catching a replay, you can ask questions via replay as well. So we'll definitely, she'll definitely come back and engage and answer any questions, or answer any questions live as I read those questions off to her. So one of the words you kept using as you were explaining your why, you were using the word wealth, and you were also using the word legacy. Some of us, depending on the individual, they may be hearing you. They may say, wait a second, I don't necessarily have any wealth, and or I'm not building anything that's, quote unquote, legacy driven. So why would something like this, right, estate planning, wills and trusts, etc., be applicable to me if I'm not in that category of quote unquote wealth, and or I'm not on track to building anything from a legacy standpoint?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. One of the things that I come across a lot is, it depends on what stage you are in your life, right? And very often people are in a position of influence, to help the other people in their family, to help the other people understand what it is they may need to do. I find that a lot of times when I'm dealing with people around my age, which is in the late 30s, early 40s, where they may have families already and they may not consider what they have to be wealth. But when you add it all up, which is what I usually do, it is actually usually pretty significant what you have under your belt, especially if you've led a trajectory, even if it's unconventional, where you have accumulated certain things as you've gone on. Even if you had multiple jobs, or even if you've been an entrepreneur, you've been doing things to add all these different things to your, what would call your asset list, right? So even though, so there are two schools when it comes to these type of things in terms of wealth and legacy. One, you are a young person just starting out, putting everything together. But more often than not, you are also the member of a family. So you are perhaps a person with influence in that family, or can just provide information to the other people in the family who may be of the mindset that if you talk about any type of estate planning, you're trying to call down death on them. But it may be just being able to give that clarification, because you may be talking about your inheritance. So, not to say stop people from selling their house because you want to get that house later. It's to say, how do you want to buy the next house so that if something happens to them, it won't be taken away? Something will be in place to protect that legacy. I find a lot of times when I'm talking to people, especially if they're dealing with probate, they're talking about how that house may have been in that family for generations after generations, and one slip up turns it into it's now being owned by some long lost son that nobody knows about, and now it's no longer in the family. All of those things that come up That's wealth and that's legacy, right? A house being passed on from generation to generation within the same family is a legacy, but it's also wealth. Because if you didn't know, real estate will accrue wealth. You know, a piece of land on this earth is valuable, and that's wealth. So even if it's not the actual monetary value, the knowledge itself is wealth, as well as what that person who may be giving you an inheritance is passing on to you, more than just, dollar or monetary value. I hope that that answered your question.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
usually
That's
when
certainly
you're
good.
not in that, you already know what you're going to get and you already know what you're going to give. The other side of that is, being available and open and sharing education with the other people in your family so that they're protecting their wealth and legacy too.
Cool. All right, that makes sense. So, from a definition standpoint, if you can kind of just help us to be better to kind of just define some of those terminologies, because some of us may hear the word will, we may hear the word trust, we may hear the word estate planning, and maybe saying, okay, well, I've heard that word, but I don't know the true definition of it, and I don't know, how it may, impact me. So, from a definition standpoint, if you can kind of just help us from a definition standpoint to define some of those things.
Sure, absolutely. So I deal with this all day long, especially in Florida. So um, we kind of have to also add a very key word, probate. More often than not, when you're talking about wills and when you're talking about trust, you're also talking about probate. And the difference between a will and a trust is probate. Okay. So let me start with probate because sometimes when you have the end in mind, it makes it easier to understand the other avenues that you can go.
Right.
So probate is the process of bringing a will or a dead person's assets, even if they don't have a will, to court and asking the court to oversee their assets and pay their creditors and then distribute what's left. That also includes making sure the court makes sure that the will is valid. Sometimes it will oversee any disputes because people think that the will wasn't valid, things like that. But generally speaking, probate is pretty straightforward. Often the intent is to transfer or rename or retitle the assets that you have as a dead person to the next person that is supposed to go to.
Got it. I know that oftentimes
I didn't
some of
answer
the
will and
things,
trust, but go ahead.
yeah, some of the things that usually brings things home for me is when I hear about, stories. This could be hypothetical situations because I know sometimes, as an attorney, there's sensitive information that you cannot necessarily share about some of the people that you've worked with.
Mhm.
However, sometimes when I hear a story about something that has happened to someone or something that could potentially have happened to someone had they not had the proper protection, that usually allows me to be like, okay, now I can kind of just see how that is connected to me. Now I can see how I may be able to potentially be in that situation. And now I see how, what, this myth that I've had all along, it was indeed just a myth. And it didn't and because it was a myth, I was going about my life the wrong way altogether. Do you have any any stories? These could be horror stories. This could be, oh man, I'm glad I
Oh
told
man,
this
do I
person
have some
story type
stories?
of thing.
Yes. And you're right. I am not allowed to go into any particular details. I won't share anything like that. But one of the things that I think can really help to clarify some things for people, because that myth thing that you were talking about that comes into play is, oh, let me put my children's name on my bank account so that if anything happened to me, they can have the bank account. Or let me make sure that there are beneficiaries on all of these accounts so that if anything happens, the person that I want to get it will get it. And they don't have to go to probate, right? They don't have to go to court. They don't have to deal with any of that. So, one example of that is um, one person had all of their accounts with their daughter. Their daughter got married. The husband came and wiped out those accounts. The mom is still alive with no money now. because she put her trust in her daughter without the understanding that there may be other people who influence that person or may have some level of control over that person that will then adversely affect you or negatively affect you. So, estate planning is that kind of stuff too. You want to set it up in a way so that you are maintaining full control and nobody's not do anything to your stuff that you don't want them to do, but also making sure that in the event that you pass away, it's going to go to who you want it to go to without having to go to probate, because ultimately you want to avoid probate if you can. The other good example that I have about not having a will was um, this dutiful son who took his mom and moved her in with him after she retired. And she went around to all the banks and she supposedly put his name on all of her bank accounts. So if she died, he would get everything. It happened that most of those bank accounts got his name on it, but one with about $500,000 did not.
Ooh.
He had a dead sister who had 9 kids, and his mom died without a will, which means in Florida, you have to go to court and it's going to be intestate, and the court decides what happens to her stuff, not the will. The will gives directions, but if there's no will, the court decides and they go by the Florida law. In that instance, he had to share that money with 11 people because
Wow.
2 of those people died and their kids had to come in. And all of these people are now all into his business and his mom's business. And he was sure that his mom didn't want anybody else to get any of this money but him. But instead, he had to share it with another 11 people because what he could have done as a dutiful son was to make sure that there was a will that says everything goes to my child. And that would have been it. There would have been really no question there because she was also going around and changing all the beneficiaries on her bank accounts to go to him. So no matter what you're doing, always have a will. That's the less the moral of that story. Because if he had one, it would have been a much shorter process. It took about a year to get that done.
Yeah, so proper documentation obviously is important, because if you don't, then you're right, it's left up to the courts, and the courts don't necessarily know the nuances, right? They don't
Oh,
know
the court
that
knows the
once,
nuances, and they're going to go about it in ice cold fashion.
yeah, they don't know
And it
that Aunt
doesn't matter if you
Sally
don't
and
like
Aunt
those
Joe
people that
doesn't
are
get
getting
along.
the
They don't know
money.
those
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
Hmm.
they don't know those things. So because they don't know those things, then they're gonna just do what they feel as though is right. So who's the right type of person that you can help, and within what jurisdiction, and what is their current circumstances? What are some of the questions that those type of individuals may be asking, right, based on the people that you've worked with in the past? Who's those right type of people, and what's the jurisdiction, and what are some of the things that's on their mind?
Sure. First, I'm a Florida lawyer. I'm an estate planning lawyer too. So, generally speaking, I can tell you about Florida law legally, but I can also give you general information that covers most of the country and, refer you to someone in another state if I can't help you. Right. But as long as you have assets in Florida, I can help you. So, more often than not, the people that come to me and the people that ask questions during my monthly webinar, my monthly education webinar online, is they are the ones that have children. I have one couple who has a newborn. I have some who have children who are often old, so like stepmoms where a kid is older than them, or blended families. I have a lot of those because they want to make sure there's no infighting, so they want to set it up right, so who's going to get what and it's clear.
Yeah.
I've had very older couples who have come down here from up north and they're settling in and they have everything that they need to retire and die with dignity. And they want to make sure that their children are going to be taken care of after they're dead, but also can help them while they're alive. So it runs the gamut in terms of who I can help. I certainly can help people not only to make sure that their assets are protected, as in protected from creditors, and protected from judgment, that their children's money is going to be protected from divorce. 50% or so of all marriages end in divorce. So, more often than not, half of the people who are giving money to their children, half of that may be going out the door when they get divorced. So, I help them to protect that for their children so they're not giving their money to the spouse that nobody liked anyway, or that they're not giving the money to the person who is coming in after one of the spouses die, because they know that they have a nice little nest egg going on, right? And they have $1 million tucked away somewhere. They're lonely. They want to see what's going on, but then they're coming with their 4 kids. And if that person dies first, they get everything, and then they pass it on to the other 4 kids that had nothing to do with that wealth building in the first place. So I definitely help families, individuals. I help younger people too, to make sure that they have someone who has a legal authority to take care of them. Consider someone who may have been in a car accident and they have a traumatic brain injury. They are now incapacitated. They may not have much, but then their parents die because they never changed their will. And now they come into $1 million of an inheritance for a brain damaged person. That person who doesn't have anything in place will have to go through the process called guardianship. If you have something in place, you can avoid a lot of this stuff, which is expensive because you have to pay people like me to do it. And it takes a long time, and it is added stress and time that a lot of people don't want to give up nowadays, especially during these uncertain times. So I help people from all ages, all walks of life. And a lot of it, like I said, is probate avoidance, but it's also protecting people while they're alive.
Got it. That makes sense. Cool. So one of the ways that people can engage, with you and or to determine, what, hey, is Chioma the right fit for me? Am I doing the right thing? How can people go about just engage? And I know one of the things that I'll encourage that you do as well is to leave some type of a link for people to take the next step with you, whatever the next step is. But what's that process like when someone says, you know what, hey, I want to go ahead and learn more about Chioma and some of the things that she does in her law firm from an estate planning standpoint?
Sure. One of the things that I encourage is that you watch my webinar. I have live webinars every month to educate the community. And it kind of gives you that extra level of education. So you're not coming to me and asking me the basic stuff. You're coming to me to ask me your particular circumstance because you already know what's the what. You already know some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So go to my website, which is www.deere-law.com, and click on Attend a Webinar. You'll either be launched into my live webinar, and if you don't want to wait for as long as the live webinar, you can sign up for an on-demand webinar. With that, you'll get the access to me to do a personal consultation, which can be up to 90 minutes, which is a $450 value for free. And I'll go through all of those questions that I'll ask you, and then you'll ask me, and we'll decide whether or not it's a good fit to move forward. And I don't do cookie cutter, but I do provide flat fees for my clients so that they have a good understanding of what to expect as far as money wise. But also, I walk them through what the process will be like so that they'll have a good understanding of not only their time investment, but also their money investment.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So as we begin to kind of just wrap things up, perhaps there are some things that you would have liked to share that just didn't come up via this conversation. So I want to go ahead and give you the opportunity to, say and or mention some things that, you know what, I probably should mention this. I didn't get a chance to mention this. Let me go ahead and mention this.
Sure. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Deere Law Firm. I'm also on LinkedIn at Deere Law Firm, and I'm on LinkedIn as LinkedIn C Deere. So if you just look up my name, you'll see me as well. You can connect with me, follow me, and ask me questions so I can give you a more information about this very important area of the law. And then the other thing that I wanted to tell you about, Be careful about how you um, title your assets and who you get into bed with, right? A lot of when business bed, not the other bed. Um, so a lot of what my clients deal with often is people who are in businesses, and I think this is very key for your audience and the people who are in Black Creators Connect, because you're talking about business people. You may be building an empire, but a part of that and a part of your team should be an estate planning attorney, as well as financial advisor, a CPA. Please take care of your money. But making sure that you know how to continue that business, making sure that you have all the documents and so on, not only to protect you, but also to protect your business for your family or for the next people that you want to leave it to. That's really, really important. And it brings me back to my brother, who was about to be like multi-million dollar company, right? And he got sick and he didn't have anything in place. He had employees depending on him. With estate planning documents, those you'll have more peace of mind. You can go on that vacation with that peace of mind, knowing that you have these things in place. Don't put it off any longer.
Certainly. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thanks for this very informative session. Thanks for the opportunity to kind of just share what it is that you know from your knowledge and or your expertise. And
Mhm.
sometimes, right, some of those topics, some of us say, you know what, I don't know about this topic, but in all actuality, we just never know, right? So it's planning for that what if, right? Sometimes we take a look at ourselves like, you know what, I'm young, I'm healthy, I got time, and or this won't be me type
Yeah.
of thing, and you just never know. So basically protecting what you have built is very, very, very important. And when I think about legacy, right, even my mom, who was a migrant person who migrated here, very, 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 very long ago, per se, this person, my mom, started a foundation. She founded a foundation that allowed myself and my siblings to be able to build here in the States. So sometimes we think about wealth and we think about legacy and we think about building, we think about that it has to be this huge thing, and it can start off
Exactly.
small and it can be built on it as well. All right,
It can
so
be built on generationally.
generationally, correct. So you've given us a way to contact you, you've given us some knowledge and or some expertise. Before we say our goodbyes, any last minute thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I am, well, yes, I'm really happy that I was here. Thank you so much for having me on, Vlad. I really appreciate it. You can't tell a lawyer if you have any more to say. Of course, I have more to say. So I'm really glad that I was able to come on and join you and speak to your family and speak to the community. Please feel free to reach out to me. If I can't help you, I'll usually find someone in the community who can. I enjoy supporting Black businesses, and I want to make sure that we have the information and the tools to continue to build generational wealth, not as a cash raise, but to actually protect yourself and your family.
All right, awesome stuff. So some of you were live. Thanks for tuning in. There's probably going to be more people that's going to catch this via the replay. Hit pound replay. Let us know where you are tuning in from. Follow Chioma, connect with Chioma, and protect what's yours. So that's it, guys. That's all we have for tonight. Thanks again, Chioma. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye, everybody.